today for the Dear Friendzy advice column, the question is actually coming from me. And
Okay.
I am interrupting the flow of questions from others because this is kind of urgent.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I need to know, as we are raising kids, am I raising hypochondriacs? Okay. I am whispering because one of them is upstairs right now, home from school again. Okay.
Okay.
So clearly, setting the scene over the last 2 years of being in a pandemic, our kids have heard us talk about symptoms, how we feel, what's going on. The whole world's been
Yeah.
trying to figure this out, right? But our kids have been absorbing it the whole time. And I think that's what I'm realizing now is that my daughters are both hyper aware of how they feel. Now, I don't know about you, Melissa Carter, but when I was growing up, if you had the sniffles, you get your ass to school.
Yes.
Okay.
I only
Like,
got diarrhea and a high fever are the only 2 reasons I couldn't go to
sure,
school.
you got the flu or whatever, you stay home. But
But sniffle
staying
nose,
home
cough, no.
was not a regular thing with
No.
us growing up. But now, in this time, our kids are being raised to be super aware of every single malady, you know, slight imperfection in the way
Right.
they feel that I am really worried that I'm raising hypochondriacs. I'm most
Huh.
concerned about my oldest, Lauren, because she's super smart and I know she's absorbing everything she hears adults talking about. Um, and that comes out in her language, in the way that she talks about COVID, in the way she talks about school. She's just, she gets it, right? She's
Yeah.
getting all of this and she's smart. And so, two questions. One is, how do I have a conversation with her about when are you really sick? What's the difference between sick and kind of not just not feeling good and we got to push through it? The other question is about oh, I just lost it. Hang on. Um about like the first one is really about like how do I have that conversation with her about the difference between when you're really sick or when you got to just push through. And we all don't feel perfect every day. Or
I
is
have an
that
answer
insensitive?
I have an answer for that, I think,
'Cause I
because
don't wanna be I don't want her to be the girl who calls wolf all the time. Oh, here's
I
the other questions. She's going to the nurse at school all the time, okay? I'm constantly getting calls from the nurse that she's checking in with the nurse. And then the other thing is how do I know I'm not getting duped because she just wants to stay home with mommy all day? There we go.
um, alright, so I think Lauren is a lot like Mr. Carter. We've talked about this before. I tease they're lab partners because they
They're
are both
cerebral.
right, very cerebral, very logic-based people. And first of all, I can't imagine Lauren doing anything maliciously, right? When you the second question is her trying to stay at home. She's trying to stay at home because she's afraid of getting something. I get that, but she wouldn't be
Mm.
doing it just to take the day off because I can't see her doing that. Because Mr. I can't see Mr. Carter doing that. I can see Reese doing that. Uh,
Yep.
but so with Mr. Carter, you know, unlike gosh, it's funny how we've kept a lot from him about COVID. Um,
Mhm.
we don't talk about too much because it really bothered him. Like he thought too much about it, right? So I
Mhm.
I think that Mr. Carter is somebody who could be prone to being a hypochondriac too. But what I do is I try to target that intelligence in him, right? And so basically what I do is I explain the body. So it's more of an anatomy thing, and I don't make it a big deal. And it's more like, okay, here's the body, and here's explains the body's defenses. So this symptom is because something, your stuffy nose is because something came in your nose, and you're just trying to throw mucus out and get that germ out of your nose. And then when it gets into your throat, okay, well, it got in, gets into your lungs. Okay, well, it got even further, and it's all your body is trying to do is kick it out. So to me, to make that short is basically like explaining how when the body's different defenses come up. So if it's a stuffy nose, That's not really sick. That's just, hey, something's in my nose. Your throat, maybe, the throat is where you may need to start, paying attention. The fever is when the defenses are really coming up. When my son felt nauseous the other night, and he didn't want to throw up, and he was dreading having to throw up, but and I just made it no big deal because I was afraid of throwing up as a child. So I was
Mhm.
like, it's no big deal, it's just your body trying to your body's helping you, your body's not trying to make you feel bad. Like, you don't be mad at your body's trying to protect you. And he ended up not. And so then I taught him the difference between nausea and actually vomiting. So anyway, we just talked through everything, but I make sure that my body language is like, it's no big deal. It's your body's doing its thing. And so you got to love your body. So to answer your question, I think I think if you explain to her just how the body works, and and decide for yourself where you find the limit of, this is where real concern comes in. Because even with COVID, the fever is a big concern, right? I mean, that's
Mhm.
the reason they do temperature checks. So, to me, that's the line, is the fever. But I don't know. I mean, your child better than anybody. So those are just suggestions. I know with Mr. Carter, and to answer, since our last show, Mr. Carter's gotten his COVID vaccine, the first shot. And so I was concerned about what to tell him to expect, because I didn't want him to have the symptoms just because I said it.
Exactly.
So what I said is, this is what adults have felt, but you probably won't feel anything. And so I just add, you know what, but and I just added that you probably won't feel a thing.
Did he
So
have any side
he had
effects?
no side effects.
Yeah.
And so when he gets the second shot, I'll do the same thing. And he probably, at least with me, I had more side effects with the second shot, but I'm not going to tell him that. All I said
Mhm.
was, I was tired, and that was it. So that pretty much is all the symptom I had. And I said, some people have headaches. Some people, their bodies don't feel too good. I said, but then I reassured him, but it all will go away. There's nothing right. Your body is
Mhm.
just, and I explained to him that your body is seeing something it's never seen before. And it's going, what is this? What did you just hand me? So I wrote on a piece of paper and handed it to him. I said, this is what it's doing. The vaccine is handing a piece of paper to your body saying, hey, when you see this, just make sure that you fight this off. So again, it's that intellect, just going toward his intellect, and his emotions are diffused as long as he understands. Okay, all right. Now, again, I don't know Lauren, how Lauren's emotions and her intellect tie in together, but I just know that with Mr. Carter, if he knows what to expect, or at least he knows the framework of what's going on, then he can handle it. It's the
Mhm.
unknown, it's the changes, he's not very good at adaptation, and
Mhm.
that's where his struggle is.
Yeah, I think for Lauren, there's like a heightened concern about how she feels or if something's a little bit off. And I think that that's just from absorbing what's been going on in the world the last couple of years, And Grant, her dad, is a superintendent of schools. And we talk a lot about COVID in this house because of everything that's going on with schools. And so I just think that it's given her this heightened sensitivity and awareness of it. I'm afraid that she's driving the nurse at school nuts. Like she's coming home. Oh, mom, I went to the nurse today. I'm like, well, what was it? And she's like, well, there was like a little rash on my leg. And I'm like, a what? And then it'll be like the next day, like, I wasn't feeling too good. And then, and I'm going, okay, I don't want her to be the boy that cried wolf, right? Because then when she really is sick, nobody's going to believe her if she's
Right.
constantly pointing out all these teeny tiny maladies. So it's like, on one hand, I like what you said about explaining to her on what the body is doing. On the other hand, need to get her to find a way of what's the threshold of really bad versus not that bad. And we
Mhm.
can we can move through this today, you
Well,
know?
well, and it could be a case of what she's allowed to go to see the nurse, limitations. I think, Mr. Carter is a rule follower. And so if we give him rules, he'll work within those rules. And
It's a sensitive thing though, right? You don't want to tell her like don't tell the nurse unless it's really bad because
well, I think you have to be
especially
specific.
now
Well, you
you
have to be
have to
specific. But you have to be specific. Again, you don't, again, with Mr. Carr, it has to be specific. I can't give generalizations. I can't say,
yeah.
when you feel bad, go to the nurse. That is a cloud. How do you define that? It's specificity. And
Mhm.
you know and for again, like, he was so there was one time where when this whole pandemic started, that there was an article that came up, and it was one of the first times they really had a blown up image of the virus, right, with the spikes and everything. And I was looking at the article, and then I don't know, he took my phone, somehow he had the phone, and an article with the image came up, and he dropped the phone. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he dropped it, like, put his hands up, and I said, "What is it?" He thought the phone had gotten the coronavirus because he saw
Oh,
it.
oh, sweet
And
thing.
so that's when, I mean, he
So
would
cute.
that's from that moment on, that's when Katie and I are like, we limit what we say to him, but he's aware, he listens to the TV. His grandmother at his grandmother's house, she's the one that likes to stay very, very informed. She's the one that watches, the news all day long. But for her, she is truly fascinated by these things. She's fascinated by the evolution of the disease. She's fascinated by crime. She's the one that watches these things, because for her it's not, I don't know, it's like a hobby for her, but sometimes it's like, well, he can't see all that, he can't be exposed to all that.
Mm.
He doesn't process things the same way. And so anyway, every parent does the best they can. These children will grow up, and they'll be the generation, of the coronavirus. They'll be called something. I don't know what it'll be, the pandemic kids or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
then they'll compare notes, and they'll evolve, and they'll figure it out. And they'll have stories to tell. And then it's like everything with our parents living in world wars, or at least my parents living through world wars, and that kind of thing. It's just, you do the best you can, because we've never experienced this before. And I think, Lauren could have done this anyway, whether it's the coronavirus or not. Maybe her personality would have done this anyway.
Mhm.
Um, you know,
That's true.
so I wouldn't worry I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I think just communication with your kids, and to let and I remember somebody saying this before. Anytime there's a crisis, and I think it's school shootings maybe, but it was always reassure your kids they're going to be okay. Like,
Mhm.
if your kids can feel safe when they go to bed, even in the back of your mind, if you don't even feel 100% secure in telling them that, you still need to make sure they feel safe, and then they can handle anything. I mean, that's your job as a parent is to clothe them and feed them and do all these things, but your main job is to make those children feel safe so they can thrive. And if she feels emotionally safe, however do it, then that's what you do. Like, Mr. Carter has become very fascinated with the body. He's the kid that picks his scabs and wants to draw bloods because he can see the blood. He loves the blood. And Katie is so concerned about that. Katie is so concerned because she's like, but when I explained to his teacher, I said, because she said, well, I think something does he got a skin thing? I'm like, no, he just likes blood. He likes the sight of blood. But we go with it because
He's interested in it. It's a
he's
science interest.
it's the
Yes, it's a
science interest.
curiosity.
He's curious. And so to me, the reason I bring that up is because I think for Lauren, that could be flipped. I mean, I truly think that motivation to go to the nurse's office all the time, and her motivation about how she feels, could be taken out of the context of the virus and turned into a fascination with the body.
Mhm.
And, who knows? I mean, like, people tease Mr. Carter about, well, you could be a doctor someday. Well, sure, he could be whatever he wants to be. But I did say to him, I said, you realize most people don't like what you like. Like, don't feel
Mhm.
bad about that. That is something that is enviable. Most people don't like, seeing that. And, yeah. And so yeah, who knows? I mean, with Lauren, it could be the same thing. She could end up being a surgeon someday, or a doctor, general practice, and she could be the school nurse, whatever it is. Somehow, I think that it's our job to help them translate what they see. This is, again, how old is she? Not
Almost 9.
9, almost 9. That she's looking at this through an 8-year-old's eyes. Then that's her perception. So you've got to help guide her, right? And Mr. Carter's seeing everything through a 7-year-old's eyes. So he's not going to process things exactly right. So I need to help him process. I don't know. You just do the best you can. But
Mhm.
I think you could turn this around and not be worried about it. I do.
Okay, on it. I immediately think, what book can I buy where we can start studying the body? right?
Right.
Maybe it's a science book or something we can get.
Well, because, there are people in my family that are hypochondriacs, right? And in Katie's family that we see that and it's crippling. That's a crippling life. And so I understand the concern because you don't want to overthink. It's like overthinking things in an emotional way and overthinking things in a logical way. And I think that if you keep her on that logic track, then she won't be a hypochondriac. I think fear, fear is what drives so many people. And I think that if you can get rid of being afraid of everything, yes, you should be afraid of the coronavirus, but you do the best you can. You get your vaccines, you wear your mask, you do your best. I mean, at some point you have
Mhm.
to just say, look, there was some guy I saw, and this is just a random tangent, but I saw a story about a guy who survived something and then got killed doing something else. I know that's a downer, but it was like in like he walked away from an accident only to fall off a cliff, basically, kind
Oh,
of thing.
wow.
And it's like, well, it was his time. That's one of those stories where you say, "Well, it was his time to go." Well, you know what? I do believe that our times are kind of predestined, so you just do the best, and if I go, then, well, it was my time. I just can't I don't wanna be afraid of every single thing in life, and I think we can teach our children not to be afraid of but I think what you're saying is absolutely makes total sense that I don't think a lot of
Mhm.
people thought about. Hopefully, our listeners are thinking about the conversations they're having in their home around their children, thinking they're playing with their dolls or their trucks or their whatever it is they play with when they are absolutely listening to everything you're saying, right?
Everything. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Little sponges. Little
yeah.
sponges. All right, well, I'll give you an update if it goes in one direction or the other.
I'm really interested in the school nurse,
Oh,
conversation. I
I feel like I need to give her a very big Christmas present before the
Oh,
end of the semester of the school year.
I'm sure the nurse thinks this is adorable.